nice to see you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you. So, I found you, like many people have, on the TikToks, which is what people old like me call TikTok.
The
Um,
TikTok, yeah.
the TikToks. And I was really captivated by your Cremains paintings, specifically, and especially the way you put together your perspective on your process and the integration of music and kind of the whole package. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that today and how that came about specifically, but painting in general. How did
Yeah.
you get started and what has your path look like?
Yeah. I mean, the whole process is quite new. I mean, I'll tell you my story briefly, right? So I started painting in 2004 by a crazy sort of situation. I've always been interested in art, museums, stuff on TV, any art show. I was sort of drawn to that, but I couldn't paint a stick figure to save my life. Just honestly, just like it just never even occurred. When we moved to the United States from Argentina with my family, a lot happened. And after a couple of years, my mom opened a gelato store, a little family business. And I was there. I was the face of it. I was a 21, 22-year-old kid learning how to make gelato. Well, there was a little art studio right next to us. And because I was there all day, I became friends. So I would go in and out, in and out. Years go by. The little art place starts to get better and better and bigger. And they start teaching classes. And fast forward, a couple of years, I walk in one night, probably the 20th time that I had walked in that day, to say hi, sort of talk to the owners or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an artist teaching a class. And this guy, his name is Ralph Papa, and he used to display in the Boca Museum, Boca Raton in Florida. Really, really good artist. And he literally, I walk in and he's like, dude, I have seen you 7 times in the last 2 hours. Like, you obviously like art. Why don't you buy something and freaking paint? And he said another word, not freaking.
You can swear on this show.
Yeah. Awesome. So this dude literally looks at me dead straight and he says that, like, to my face. And I don't know, I'm 22, 23, somewhere around there, 22 years old. And he just sort of like stopped me a little bit. And I hope my mom doesn't hear this. I walked back to the cash register. I took out like the last $40 we had for that day, which was a terrible day. And I walked back in and I bought a small canvas and I bought like yellow, red, white, and black paint. And I painted the, I don't know, at the time it was a music cover. It's like a triangle. What's the name of this drives me crazy. The triangle with like the prism going through. Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd, yeah. And for some reason that was in my head, and I'm like, this is going to be my first painting, which I have till today, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And anyway, so I started painting. Not a month later, there were 30 canvases just like covering the walls of the gelato store. I sold my first painting 3 days after I was painting. For some reason, I went from that to wanting to imitate or copy the, I don't know, I think it was like Windows 98. And the laptop used to have like this fall scenery. It was like a road with like trees. So I went from doing that to I'm like, oh, I'm going to paint this next. I'm pretty sure this is why the gelato store failed. It's because I used all the money for art. Now that I look back.
Huh. Correlation
I'm
there.
thinking about this now. Yeah, I'm thinking about this now. My mom is going to kill me.
She'll forgive you.
And
I think she'll forgive you.
Yeah, I think we're good now. She's got a few paintings at home, so I think we're past that. But yeah, so anyways, I started painting, started a relationship, started changing my life, moved away. We sold the gelato store, we closed that business. I moved into the business world. I was with my ex for 12 years, and I didn't touch a single canvas for those 12 years. I didn't paint once. So I went from like a million paintings, started my life, started in business. I had to grow up. Moved in with my ex, and and so 12 years, nothing. Fast forward to 2018, I decided to make very big life changes. Around April 2018, I decided to make very big life changes. I'm thinking to myself, I'm about to turn 34. I separated myself a lot from my family, which is nothing that I've ever wanted to do. Just went that way. Mistakes of a young person. They're back in Argentina. I'm the only one here. My dad is in New York, but the rest of my family is in Argentina. And I wanted to get back to being healthy. I wanted to reconnect with my family. I was about to turn 34, and one day I sat there and I'm like, I cannot believe this is what life is going to be. And I simply needed to do something different. Just it wasn't good. So anyways, a friend of mine let me stay in their house with a brand new born baby. I love Joe to death and Jessica. They had literally like a 2-month, 3-month-old baby, and here they are opening their house to me, which was insane. I started doing just that. So a couple months later, I rented. This was painful. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment that cost me more than what my mortgage was. I'm used to just owning homes and stuff. I'm 34 years old at this time, right? And I'm like, I cannot believe I'm going to pay $1,500 for a 1-bedroom apartment in Austin. Anyways, passed through the growing pains. It turned out to be an amazing place. I made a million friends. I had a TV that wasn't even plugged in the living room of this tiny apartment for like 4 months. And then I said, I'm never going to use this. What if I start painting? So like everything that I do, I went on Amazon and I bought the largest roll of canvas that I could possibly buy, because I didn't want to just buy a pre-framed canvas. I didn't want to have any limits. So the painting that's behind you in the office right now is about half of what I started painting.
Oh, wow.
And I just grabbed a roll of canvas. It was like a 20-foot long roll of canvas by like 11. I rolled it up in the entire length of the wall in the living room. I nailed it to the wall, and that was the first time that I started painting again in 2018 after 12 years.
So when you were in this relationship and before things ended, when you were still in it and you weren't painting, did you have those little pangs of knowing like, maybe this isn't the right thing? I'm not painting. This is the thing I'm passionate about. This is the thing I love. It's not happening. Why isn't it happening?
Yeah, I mean, that happened a lot over the years. And I was so immersed in the company that I was working in. I was in a fast pace. I was growing like crazy. I was making really good money. I went into a business mindset, which I still have, and I think is going to help me in building a new business. But I learned so much from an industry that I didn't know I was going to love, and I fell in love with it. And so nothing else mattered. I was just like 16 hours a day. You can't stop me. I dare you to do anything as good as I'm going to do it. And that, for the most part, for many years, that was the case. There were times where I wanted to, but like as an artist, one of the things that if any artist listens to this, they'll be able to understand. Like, you can't put everything, like set everything up to paint. An hour later, something is gone. You don't feel like painting anymore. You can't put everything away and then retake it all out again and reset everything out. Like, stuff has to be there for when you're ready. And I never had that space. It always had to be the guest bedroom, or it always had to be like the office. And sometimes when I was in Louisiana or Texas, I couldn't use the garage because half the time in summer you die of heat. So anyways, there was always something, and I didn't want to sometimes, I don't know, I was insanely busy. I didn't want to deal with that, and so it was easier to say no and move on.
What industry were you in when you were working corporate life?
What was I doing?
Yeah.
I was in the mattress industry. Yeah.
So, wow.
I worked for the largest mattress company in the world.
Like a sales function?
I started in sales, and then I moved into leadership and management and whatnot. So it sort of grew from there.
Yeah, I would say you have some amazing skills that you acquired to pull from for what you're doing now. And when we're in that place and like saying no to something that we feel doesn't serve us anymore. And I know this from my own experience, because I left the company I'm in now for a while. I explored some things and then I came back to it. I'm really passionate about it. But I think sometimes we think, oh, I just have to like let this thing go. and we almost devalue what we have learned and what we have taken until we realize, oh, maybe I can use this in building my next thing.
Yeah.
These are actually skills that are useful.
Yeah, I've never wanted to take things for granted. So I know that I did a lot of learning on my own because I do a lot of reading and I wanted to apply that. But you can't take away what that world and what that business teaches you. The things that I've been previous to, the people that I've met, I will never discount that ever, because that is, I found love in something that I didn't love. Like, nobody walks into a mattress store and says, oh, this is going to be an amazing job. I'm going to sell mattresses. You don't think that way. You're just thinking, I'm going to get a job. So it turns out that once you learn about sleep and once you learn about benefits, and once you start really getting into it, not just the product, and then at the end of the day, no matter what we do, for the most part, there is some level of selling, some level of convincing, some level of positive or negative manipulation, depending on what you do, right?
We call that marketing.
Yeah, well, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's just I don't know why the word sometimes is so offensive, but I've come to learn, like, it doesn't have to be. You are positively manipulated to purchase something that you need, and you either buy it from this person or this person. It's just who talks to you in a language that you understand, right?
Right.
Simon Sinek, I don't know if you've heard of him, but
love
he
him.
says, and I'm horribly paraphrasing, and I love him too, but act and do and say what you believe, and you'll attract those who believe what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been in my head for so many years, and that's in a way how I live my life, how I present who I am and what I do on TikTok now and on camera, which is not an easy thing to do for a lot of people. It wasn't for me, but if I wasn't speaking to 350 people in a sales training, I wouldn't be able to do this on camera right now. I would be paralyzed like some people are, right? So the details that you can't take away, and I will always give credit back to where I learned all of this from, you know?
Yeah, and it is so clear too when you're on Instagram or TikTok or wherever people are interacting with you, that it is your authentic self coming through. You're so passionate about what you're talking about, and you can feel that. So it's beautiful to watch you work. And
there's a lot of emotions with this new chapter in my life. A lot of emotions involved in that. I am not an overly emotional guy outwardly. I'm Latin, so that's always going to be there. But I don't, I'm not like crazy boisterous. I'm calm, and fairly rational. And I'm not a religious person. I respect literally all religions, and I'm inquisitive. I want to learn, but I have my set of beliefs. And starting this journey has created. I find myself filming some of the videos, and I want to get content out, but sometimes I'm stopped. I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel it. I can't. I don't know what the feeling is. It's such a bizarre. It's a whole new journey, right? Which I'm once again starting all over again. Leaving my organization just a month ago to commit to something like this for the rest of my life, and. But what I thought, I made a video about this the other day. I'm like, easy. I'm going to power through 20 paintings a week. I know I can do them. I'm like doing the times in my head. I am like, well, there's curing time for this painting, so I'm going to start the other one. Once I'm finished with that first layer, I'm going to let it cure. I'm going to start with the other one. I can do like 20 paintings in a week. Nope. Wrong. Wow.
Because
I also did this so I could change my life, just because it consumes you. Like I am holding. I'm holding in a Ziploc bag or in a little urn or in whatever my customers can send them to me in, and I'm holding a human life. And there's literally 72 packages in my house right now, and I don't have spirits or feel like that. There's a lot of people that believe or sense that, and whether I don't believe it or I don't know how to do it or I don't sense it, I don't know what it is, but I don't have that. Whatever any of those situations are, something internally is happening, and I feel like I need to get ahead and learn how to work through it, because I feel drained, and energy is energy, right? If I'm going to believe in something, that's probably going to be it. But I've decided to work on between 7 and 8 paintings a week, which I could easily do more. but I also did this to improve my life. And if I improve my life and I'm happy, what I deliver is going to be of higher quality. And so I rather set better expectations with my customers on the time frame than power through a painting and be miserable at 3 a.m. painting because I have to meet a due date or a timeline, right? So this is all not only something for somebody else, but it's also my personal journey and personal change, which has been kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I can imagine that anyone who engages with you would rather have you take the time to, take the time on their paintings as well. And like you said, it's not powering through 20 paintings. It's, honoring the lives of 7 or 8 people or 20 people or whatever it is that you're working with that week. And I made a face when you were saying, you have 72 people in your home right now, because I am someone who that would be a very crowded house, and I would really have to have a lot of energetic protections in place. So, not surprising that perhaps you feel a little drained at some points.
But I am so open to learning and experiencing and understanding more than anything new things. There's a ton of comments that come through about what I should do, and I have friends that are very much into a spiritual world that I am not into, and I almost want to get their perspective. I'm like, because I don't have anything, I don't know what the words are to describe sometimes. I don't want to, in no way do I want to offend somebody from a personal stance, but it's also a stance from like wanting to learn. Just because I've never experienced it or believed in it or thought about it, doesn't mean that I don't want to learn about it. And which I think attracts a lot of people to me as well, because I am inquisitive when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, there are, when you sort of rationally think about it, there are about 70 packages that are stored right now safely in my closet, away from everything else, my dog or anybody that would come in. And if you kind of get into that, like, that could be overwhelming. You know?
Yeah. How did you do? Okay. So, I love this picture of you hanging the canvas that's, 20 feet long in your apartment. And do you remember like what you felt when you hung that, what your emotions were, or what was going through your head when you did that?
I was first annoyed because I couldn't get it up there to stay, so my arms were getting tired. So I'm like, why the heck did I have to do this? Why couldn't I just buy a 20 by 20 canvas at Hobby Lobby like any normal person would do? I mean, it was 11 feet long. Like, why did I do this? It was just ridiculous. That's an unfinished painting, by the way. But I don't know what happened like the days prior, where I'm like, I'm not sure about this, but there's an artist that just recently passed away that influenced anything and everything about art for me. His name is Jonas Gerard. Incredible artist from North Carolina, from Asheville. Jonas Gerard with a G. The coolest fluid artist that I've ever seen. This is a 70-year-old man. Originally, I think he was from Morocco or in that part of the world. Crazy guy, raspy voice, crazy hair. The coolest dude. I've been to his gallery, which was one of the best things ever. But I think I was for some reason like retouched on his website and rewatched some of his landscapes, and he did everything very abstracty, but you could clearly tell it is a landscape. He's incredible. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do something like that, just wild colors. And so I started a landscape, like trees and a lake and sky. And I just remember beginning the piece, and 4 hours have gone by, and I was still painting, and I had no clue what was going on. Like, I didn't pay attention to my phone. And if you know me, and if anybody that knows me happens to hear this podcast, they will laugh, because my screen time on my phone is upwards of 13 to 14 hours. That's the average. And that is the God honest truth. It's
no
brutal.
Wonder you're so responsive.
It's not okay, right? So I'm trying to change that, but yes, like it is. And so 4 hours, 5 hours go by, and people can't get in touch with me. People get worried. And I laugh. In fact, so much so that when I was in the company and there was a new hire training, they would jokingly call me and prove to the new hire that the phone wouldn't even ring once, and I was already like there answering. And that was their joke. And I'm like, guys, I have a job to do. Like, I can't be randomly answered, but the phone will be answered. So yeah, I just remember in that moment getting lost, and a thought came to mind. Like the first time that I painted, the exact same thing happened. So like clearly somehow, somewhere that's been in me, and that's my outlet. It's either painting or deep sea fishing. Those are my two things where like I'm gone.
Wow.
I'm like covered in fish everywhere.
That's so.
Yeah, those are my things.
The like common thread that I'm hearing here is all about flow. So not a surprise to me that deep sea fishing is the other passion of yours, but also like thinking about that moment when the gentleman, you know, quite clearly, and how wonderful it is when we have people in our lives that see what we're not actioning on and get us to go there for ourselves. The gentleman that said, you should be painting, what are you doing? And then you went and did all these paintings. And then when you got back to painting, you got lost for 4 hours. And now you've shifted into this very emotional realm. That's a beautiful gift and a service for people. And I'm wondering how you got there from where you were painting previously.
Well, when I started in 18, painting again, I started back again with acrylics and canvas, which is what I would normally do. And then I'm a Googler. I'll just Google and YouTube stuff all the time. So I happened to come across some resin arts and some abstracts, and I found for the first time in my life, I had social media. So I had an Instagram, and my Instagram feed started feeding me stuff. I'm like, this is really cool. This is awesome. And I found a couple artists that I fell in love with. And just my personality is like, oh, cool. You could probably do that. You paint. And I started. I'm like, but just like when I cook, I'll be like, here's a recipe. But by halfway through, I will literally have changed everything about it. I do the same thing with art. So I started using epoxy. And the first time that I used resin was on an abstract piece that I created after the really failed 11 by something. I rolled that one up and I unrolled a canvas again and started going back into abstract. That was maybe a foot smaller, so it was still like gigantic. But I finished that one. I wanted to do back again abstract work like I was doing before. And I like really bright, bold colors when I do my abstract work. And so I did that. And then the idea came that I was going to frame it myself. So I went and I bought wood in a giant, like 8-foot painting, and I framed it. And I left it at my friend's house. And then my idea was, well, if I'm going to start epoxy resin work, then I'm just going to resin this piece first. And not a little piece to learn how to work with resin, but an 8-foot by 6-foot painting. So I'm working with like 2 gallons of epoxy, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what the mixing is. I don't know what the time to mix it is. I don't know how it needs to be poured, how thick it needs to be poured. I don't know that it's going to puddle in the middle because it's super heavy. So the canvas will end up having like 2 gallons of resin in the middle and nothing on the outside, and it wasn't covered. I didn't know how I had to clean the art prior to and after. So anyway, that painting was an absolute disaster. Totally ruined it. It was sticky forever. It stayed in my friend's garage for like a year until I was able to, when I was about to move it somewhere else, he finally brings it to my house, maybe longer than a year actually. And there were like spider webs and dead bugs stuck to it because the epoxy never cured properly. It was just like an absolute disaster. So when he unloaded it here at home, I'm like, you know what, Joe, my buddy Joe, I'm like, you know what, man, new life, new changes, new everything. Let's just destroy this piece and like create the symbolic effect of getting rid of the past and like moving on with the new. And before I said anything, the dude was already like putting a knee to the wood and just like breaking it. Like, let's go. This thing is gonna.
He's been done with it forever.
He was done. So I remember being on the phone and like here's like the wood just being like split into a million pieces. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess it's done. I guess you agree with me. It's gone. So that's what happened with that painting. But then I moved into smaller pieces, and then I saw the ocean. And I'm like, oh, how cool. How do you do that? And I started. I'm like, do I do this with acrylics? Do I do it with inks, tints? I started working products that I've never heard before, like alcohol inks. I didn't even know what that was. What does that work on? And once I learned what it worked on, then I'm like, well, can I do this on canvas? why not? Let's try it. And so I started doing stuff on canvas that are displayed in different buildings in Austin right now. And stuff's just kind of looked cool, and I just kept trying. Once I found the oceans, though, I had a pretty big connection with that. And Instagram posts started getting like a little bit of action, which to me was like 15, 20 likes at the time. But, you know, from nothing ever to 20 people responding, you're like, oh, 100 people have seen this, 20 liked them? I'm like, that's cool. And then I started going to coffee shops here in Austin, and I already, by that time, I had built a little inventory of abstracts and stuff that I was learning how to do. There's my favorite coffee shop here. It's called Cosmic Coffee House. And Cosmic is a really cool outdoor place. They used to do art shows like once a month. And so I ended up buying little racks, and I started doing little shows there. And I don't know, I was selling 3-4 paintings. So I'm like, oh, I'm selling 200 paintings. This is awesome. Let me keep doing this. All of this full-time job, like still, like nothing has changed in my life, like full blown with my career in sales. And then as far as the, this might shock you actually, but as far as the cremated remains paintings, that only actually became a thing about 2 months ago.
Oh, that does shock me.
Yep.
So how did that come about? How did you start working with Remains for the first time?
I was doing my ocean pieces, and several months back, towards the beginning of the year, I partnered up with. I found a product that I fell in love with, and because of my engagement and participation, I became friends with the owner of the company, and her name is Victoria Wynn. And I always sort of tag the products as I'm now an ambassador for the company. But it's been some time together. We found a lot of commonalities in the way that we think and the way that we feel about art and the way that we have an emotional response to it. And I began incorporating her powders slightly differently than what she was doing with them and what other people were doing with them. So she really liked that as well. And through our time together, I became an ambassador for it. And so I started creating really realistic, really cool, really bright ocean paintings, and they just started getting better and better. And I learned how to incorporate sand into it, and I was doing oceans with the sand, with different colors, and they look super real and super beautiful. And I began using what I was doing with her products, and the combination was just a lot of what you see today. And one customer reached out to me and says, "Hey, would you be able to do this?" And without even thinking twice, I said yes. Like I don't remember like thinking about it. I think I've always learned to like you first take the job and then you figure out what to do. You know, just you first say yes. And I couldn't imagine it being too crazy different than working. You know, I just assumed in my mind when that came about in my mind the ceremonial moment of sprinkling the ashes in the sand, I felt would be incredibly symbolic, that I would literally be doing it. And since you can't spread ashes now in beaches right now, although that is not really legal to do as far as I've learned. I mean, you could easily be on a boat and you sprinkle ashes in the ocean. Technically, nobody would know, I guess. But you can't walk up to the beach and just start throwing somebody's cremated remains in there. And in my mind, this is, I guess, the second best thing in a way, like as opposed to perhaps being displayed in a box or in an urn. What I've learned since is astronomical. The stories that I've heard are major shockers. And that's where the emotional response sort of begins taking a toll. Anytime a post goes viral, which I've been super blessed that there's been a lot of them that have. But when a post hits 2 million views and 50,000 comments in a week, there's a significant percentage of that becomes people trying to inquire about what you do and wanting to do it. So even today, the things have sort of slightly quieted down because of the last couple of days I haven't posted much. I still get an average of between 50 and 200 inquiries per day, of which maybe 2 or 3 people a week will be able to do something or can do something, or it applies to what I'm doing. I don't do mountains. I don't do forests. I don't do golf courses. I don't do portraits. So it is a shocker when somebody sees like 20 of my videos and then they ask me for a cow in the field. I'm like, that's not my style. Yeah, I don't want to be disrespectful in any way, but I'm just sitting here.
Sure.
I'm like, you're looking at like 350 ocean paintings. Where does the golf course, with,
Yeah.
it's not, I'm working with fluid products. Anyways, it's not what I do. But yeah, it was because of them, and I did it. And when I did it, I knew that I wanted to document everything way more. I knew that I wanted to share a story, and I knew that it was going to be, I personally knew how delicate the situation was, to where I wanted to do everything possible for my customer to know that I was going to treat the person with the utmost respect that you can possibly have. One of the things that I think about till today, and I don't have an understanding and I don't have an answer for, we discussed it in a previous podcast that I did. Interesting to see your take on it, but I don't understand how I can create in a 30-second to a minute video on a piece of art such emotional, deep connection and such response that you would reach out to me via TikTok and then follow me to Instagram and consider sending me your son, your daughter, your cousin, your brother, and I don't know, $500, $1,000 for a painting in a matter of an Instagram text conversation, like in an hour, in 2 hours, or the next day. Like, how does a TikTok video in 30 seconds create that response where you're sending a random dude stranger in Austin, Texas, like in South Austin, and his little house, like my little, that you don't know? It's just, how how many TikTok videos I see a day? Like, I would never like consider anything like this. Like, what is it about my video that does that? It's a shocker for me day in and day out. I don't understand it.
I have an answer for you. I know
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
Please.
It's because you are 100% authentic in the way that you project yourself and your work. It is so clearly not about the money being made as a painter or some precious attachment to your art. It is so clearly about the people that you are honoring in these paintings, and the way that you have a sense of ceremony and ritual about how you incorporate them into the paintings. I don't think is typical for people to see. And I'm in the death world as an end of life doula. Part of what we do when people want to do it is help create, and I hate this name, a legacy project, a leave behind for people. And that can take any shape. It's only limited by the person's creativity. But it's a foreign concept to think about how you might want to live on, or how you can be present with your family, community, friends, loved ones after death. And so when you have somebody that is doing that in a way that is so loving and genuine and honoring of the person, it automatically just touches somebody else's heart. It's your heart to their heart. There's the business aspect isn't even there, and there's an automatic trust that's built.
It doesn't stop surprising me. It really doesn't. Incredibly grateful. I mean, luckily, my mom and my dad raised me well.
Clearly.
That's all I can say. But yeah, it's just been, I don't know, man. It's been bizarre to think that something like this would come at a time where I was starting to lose the passion and the drive that I've had for 12 years, and I wasn't being happy. To also consider 2 years after the biggest change of my life ever to do another one. It's only, to me, like, I can only think that the years of like self-development and adapting to change in that world is the only way that I've been prepared for something like this. I mean, I've been over 6 figures with this job for the last 11 out of the 12 years, and that is not a standard of living that it's easy to draw up to. Being painting way, right? Like, I like to spend my money on like good food and travel, and a lot more lately than ever, like visiting my family and stuff, or doing stuff like that. Not as much as I would like, but that's kind of the goal. And to make a decision at 36 I mean, whenever I made the post about that, there were like 50 comments of, we're in the middle of COVID. How could you possibly do something like that? It's such a mistake. You better have 2 years worth of savings. And then there were 6,000 comments of people are like, absolutely, everything else will come. And I subscribe to that belief. The way that I think about it is no matter what I've done so far, based on who I am as a person, how I've been raised, and how I operate just as a human, I've found success even if I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was able to figure it out. And so that started to minimize my fear a lot. And I knew that I've done it without the knowledge that I have now in life. And so it just seemed natural to push a little bit past through those fears, because yes, it's unknown, but it was also unknown when I was selling mattresses. Do we have time for a 1-minute story?
Please.
When the first day that I started selling mattresses, I was panicking, right? I was 23 years old. I was dressed in my little suit, fully shaven, baby face, because we couldn't wear a beard, and I was very upset about my goatee having to be shaven at 23. True story. But I remember the utter panic, so much so that I was in Boca Raton training at a store, and the guy that was training me, super cool kid, was trying to like motivate me and get me started in learning. And every time that a car would pull into the parking lot, I could see it through the windows up to the side. And every time I'd see a car slow down, I would pretend like I had to go to the bathroom, and I would hide behind the wall. And if they came into the store after my store manager at the time greeted them, I would come outside and I would sit down, put my head down, and keep studying. Well, 3 days, and I did that like 6 or 7 times. Well, 3 days in, it's like almost 8 o'clock, time to close the store. We have like an hour left. A customer comes in, I do that. I come outside, and not a second after I sit down, another couple comes in. That had never happened. And I am white. I mean, I'm a ghost. I am literally panicking. It was a young couple. Long story short, an hour later, they bought a $1,000 mattress. I made my first sale. I'm like ecstatic. And fear started to like a little bit go away, right? And then after that, I just found like incredible success after that. And the relationships that I built with my customers were super, super deep. Like somebody's giving you $5,000 for a Tempur-Pedic mattress, and they're baking you a cake on Sundays when they come and deliver to you at the store. Like, this is like inconceivable. And I learned that it was more about the relationship and the care that I was putting into what I was doing. So if I wanted to be successful and make money so that I could do whatever I wanted to do, I knew that it didn't have to be sneaky. I knew that it could be done the right way, and that would breed a lot more. So it seems a little harder to work initially, but the long-term vision is always way better. And I've started to develop that from early on. And so whenever this came about, even though it took me some time to commit to it, it was a lot less than what it would be for most people who are terrified of, 36 years old. What are you going to do? Paint for a living? Like, that's not how it is. What people don't know is that there's a million things that you can do to make a living, In
a million different ways. Yeah.
In a million different ways, in so many ways. And, so, I did. The last month has been some of the happiest times of my life. I'm able to deliver with big level of detail what I want to create for people and the way that I want to honor them. I am able, for the first time in my life, wake up at 7 or 8 in the morning, make a cup of coffee, and just go and like hang out with my pup. And I let her out, and maybe we walk or play outside. And I've never been able to. Sometimes it's weird. I still jump out of bed and I'm like, oh my God, conference call. It's Thursday. And then I'm like, oh, never mind. So I feel really weird. I still don't know. I'll finish a painting or a layer of a painting at 3 p.m. one day, and I'll drive over to my coffee shop that I was telling you about with my dog. And I get out of the car and I feel like I'm cheating, like I shouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, oh wait, like you work for yourself now.
Mm-hmm.
And as an artist, like if it's 2 a.m. and it hits you and you can go and do something, then that's what I'll do. I don't have that time, and it's just a bizarre feeling. I still don't know how to handle. I built some basis for some sort of schedule, but I don't have a schedule in a way.
Yeah.
And it feels weird. It just feels weird.
Yeah, you were raised
I
in
think,
the corporate like culture of here's how you do this, and then now you don't have to do that anymore. You get to reinvent it for yourself, which is my hope for everybody. It's what I want to put out into the world is
yeah,
why do we wait until we are dying or something crazy happens in our lives to live the life that would truly be closest to our soul and make us happy. And that is what I hear from you right now. That's what I'm seeing in your face. Not that everyone can see this, but if you could, you would see
yeah,
this light in Fed's
yeah.
face right now.
This is super silly and maybe insignificant, but every time this has happened lately, and somehow it's helping me do it. Every time something like a particular decision comes up, and I would lean towards the, oh no, I have work to do, so I can't go and do such, or any of those moments, my brain just goes, we have one life. Like, we literally have, like, it's so ridiculous of a thought sometimes. Like, we have one life. Like, why can't I go for 2 days to Colorado? Like, what is actually stopping me from doing that?
Yes.
There's nothing stopping me. And you're like, I don't know. Like those moments, I'm like, oh no, I can't go to dinner because blah blah blah. I'm like, do I really, like, is this, if a year goes by and I look back, is something going to negatively affect me by not doing that? Or am I going to be like, damn it, I really should have. I know I could have, but like all of the excuses that we make, right, all the time.
Yep.
And I know that those are like, you fight within yourself in those moments, day in and day out, with most decisions that we make. I just want to minimize them, I guess, and I want to be able to do these things. I want to be able to do something cool. One of my goals beginning this year, aside from like business goals of building what I'm doing, one of my goals is to actually start bringing awareness to what I'm doing and have more artists sort of join in this little movement. I don't, like I said earlier, right? I don't do portraits. I don't do golf courses. I don't do mountains. In the last 2 months, I must have turned down, I don't know, if I tell you 300 or 400 people that wanted to do this that I had to say no to, I may be short. But most importantly, I would love for this to become a little bit more of a comfortable situation. Like, I've never had a big problem discussing death. I get hit pretty hard by the stories that I hit of how death happens. But it's also an awareness of, do we really have that? Do we have it that bad? Like, when you start listening to the things that I've read over messages and what people are openly sharing with me, I have shared copy pasted posts to my mom directly in Argentina, and she has literally called me in tears and asked me to stop sending her the stories because she isn't as rational in a way as I am. She's a lot more emotional, and I can see that if I do this, I'm sending it from a point of view of like, this is unreal. Like, we need to be grateful. Or if somebody isn't, they should really look at what people are actually going through out in the world, and what they've gone through, and sort of self-awareness moment just for life. And in a way, I use that for me. Like, if I'm going to go into any type of ungrateful moment in my head, I'm like, no, bro, like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
So I'm also going through a journey, but I have heard, can I share one of the worst stories that I've heard?
Sure.
You prepared for that?
I'll put a warning in the intro.
Yeah. And I won't name names or anything, but long story short, a mother doesn't hear her baby crying in the morning like babies would when they're a couple of weeks old. This is in a big city in the States. And she gets up, goes to check on the baby in the morning, like any exhausted parent, right? They fell asleep and didn't hear the baby cry, so slept. And when they jump up and wake up, they go to the crib and they see their baby with their throat completely open and slit open. And apparently somebody's walked into the room through the window killed the baby in the middle of the night, walked out, and a 2-week-old baby was basically like they slit their throat, baby's throat, and that's how she found her baby dead in her crib, bled out
Oh.
when she woke up. And yeah, that's a real story of a person who wanted to have their babies cremated remains as a memory for their own reasons in one of my paintings. And I can't get that out of my head. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to read that time and time and time again. And so I think that the fact that I've been in a way like prepared for like quote unquote difficult situations in business helps me. Nothing can help you to live that. I have a hard time listening and reading that from a stranger that I don't know. I couldn't even remotely imagine. But that was a real story. And those are the things that I read day in and day out. The amount of COVID moments this year are astronomical. There was a customer of mine whose son and husband, they fell in the ocean with their plane coming back from either a weekend or a mini vacation or something. They were lost at sea. And when weeks later or days or weeks later, when they found the plane, there were dolphins surrounding the plane and the baby was still inside, and they wouldn't let the divers get close to the plane, kind of like protecting the kid that was still in the plane. Like that moment was insane. Like how does that happen? And so the divers told her that story. They couldn't get close to the plane because the dolphins were surrounding and not letting anybody get through, sort of protecting the kid, the baby. I say baby is probably 8 or 9 years old, still a baby. Yeah, and then there's people who've gone through 5 or 6 different family members in a matter of like a couple of weeks, all back to back for many reasons. Weird and totally coincidental. Like, you know, I'm going grocery shopping, car accident, I turn around, slip and fall. The other person was in the hospital. Here's the story, can't handle it, passes, like one after the other. Like, what's the movie, like Final Destination or Final Fantasy or whatever that movie is? I don't remember the name of it. And so, yeah. So one of the things that I do that I feel like I need is I want to get to know the person that I'm working with. So I'll always ask for a letter with a story, whatever they want to share with me. And so I could probably make a painting without that, but I don't know. I find myself, I've read letters when I have colors picked out, and I've read a letter from a person and I've literally put a color away and grabbed a different one. And call it what you will, right? Call it, like we talked about earlier, energy. It doesn't matter. Something happens where I'll have this blue in my hand that I wanted to use, and I knew I was going to use it. I read a letter, and I'm like, like something's off. And I change. It's so bizarre. I don't understand it. Well, I don't understand anything that's happening right now, honestly. Like, things are just happening.
It's really, really beautiful to see, and it's really an honor to hear this story today. And for a guy that's not very spiritual, you on a spiritual journey, my friend. So,
yeah.
I love that you're also wanting to join forces with other artists so that more people can get their needs met in the way that they want to. And I have some ideas for you. I'll send you separately. That the death world would love you, and the work that you're doing. And so
I didn't know this world existed. I heard 4 months ago the word doula for the first time in my 36 years. I didn't know that was a word. Somebody commented. Yeah. Somebody made a comment. I'm like, did you misspell something? I'm like, I don't know what that is. And I literally had to like research it.
Yeah.
Bizarre. You're actually the third person that I've spoken to in this world. I just appreciate the comfort and the awareness that doesn't get brought up too much. And it's going to happen to all of us. The older we get, the more chances of losing loved ones, and it becomes more difficult because you spend more time with them. Just like that whole process of, you're never gonna, I assume you're never really gonna learn. You're never gonna get over it, right? But you will minimize or begin the process of finding some type of comfort faster, I think.
Yes.
That's how I look at it.
Yeah, 100%. The more that It's because we hold death at bay and we don't talk about death and we don't have a comfort level with it, that it is made that much harder. And so also then all of the little things that we go through in our lives, all the little things that we have to kill off, like our corporate job or relationship or things that end, all of those little deaths become that much harder as well. What would happen if we had more of a closeness with the topic of death? And so I love that you're bringing that to people in a way that is really accessible and easy for them to embrace.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very bizarre that somebody would feel a sense of relief. I've seen it in the videos, I've seen it in the phone conversations, or I've heard it in the phone conversations, and they find a part of the closure, they find comfort. I guess those are the feelings. Something sort of clicks and it becomes where it's almost a little selfish in a way, right? Like this, we are needing that comfort from somebody that is gone. I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just like, it is us who remain in a lot of pain. I don't know that I know what the person that is gone feels or not, or senses, right? But it is us who hold on to things, and we sometimes can't let go for a million reasons. I don't know that we should let go. I'm just, if what I do can have the dual purpose of giving somebody peace, and then also continue to allow me to do it for others, that's a pretty big win, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's a huge
win. So I'd like to continue to build that, you know.
I'm excited for you to do that. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Tell people really quickly where they can find you.
Yes. So I am Art by Fed. That's Fed. And I am on TikTok under that name. And I am on Etsy under the same name. And Instagram it's sort of both. It's my full name, which is Federico Portalupi. And I guess we can maybe spell it because nobody's going to be able to get it. But you can still find me as Art by Fed. I am in those 3 platforms. I use Facebook, but I honestly don't know how to use it. But I've tried to simplify the whole process and just be Art by Fed. It's all together. It's one word, no spaces, and that is me. I just wanted to have an easy name that people could remember and not have to go through all of these like fine arts and all this crazy names sometimes that we have. So it's literally my name. It's a short version of my name, and I do art. Easy.
I will put this also in the show notes. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.